Modern Railways. In-depth railway news.
Well, hello and welcome to the preview of the February 2023 Modern Railways. As you can see, I've got out and about today, bit of a change from the studio. We're on a CAF Class 197 DMU. And things like, how noisy is it? Not very. How warm is it? Also not very. But still, not a bad train really in general. Seems to be better than the Midlands version, but all the reviews in the magazine. First up then, we're going to talk to Roger Ford, who's going to tell us what's in his informed sources for this month. So over to you, Roger.
Only 20 months after the William Shapp's plan for rail was published, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, is having second thoughts. He appeared before the Transport Select Committee in Parliament in December and was asked about progress with Great British Railways and the William Shapp's plan, and he said, while very much his plan is to review the intention behind the plan, he is taking some time to consider different views both inside and outside Parliament. I'll come to those different views in a moment. Meanwhile, Great British Railways isn't going anywhere fast, anywhere time soon. It has a bill needed to give it its legal powers, and that missed the current parliamentary session, the third session, and the next session starts in the autumn of this year. That could give the bill its powers sometime in 2024, but of course the next general election has to be by January 25, so it's all getting very tight. And by the way, try not to call it Great British Railways or GBR, because that is tainted by the association with Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, and his Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. So it's now Reform is the polite way to talk about the whole business. And now for those different views I mentioned. A number of former rail ministers had been getting at Mark Harper about one detail of the William Shapp's plan. This is the idea that the train services will be run under passenger service contracts, which will in fact be concessions. Great British Railways will determine the timetable, the fares, and so on and so forth, and the concessionaires will just run the railway and manage the costs. This has caused some concern among older right-wing MPs because it would rob the railway of the entrepreneurial flair and initiative and innovation that the franchisees brought to the old railway. At least that's what they say. Anyway, Rail Minister Hugh Merriman asked the industry for their views on this concern, and to my somewhat surprise, Network Rail got into bed with the Rail Partners Privatisation Lobby Group. I've got a copy of their report, and it seems to me as though it's a call for a return to franchising Mark I. And now for the technical stuff. Back in 2009, when Network Rail began procurement of traffic management, I was quite deeply into this and have been reporting it in detail ever since. As we now know, the traffic management procurement got nowhere very expensively, but Derby-based Resonate came from behind with their Luminate traffic management and delivered the goods. This was sold on the basis of a trial with Great Western on the assumption that if it works, we'll buy it. And it did, and they got a contract. Another contract superseded this first one, extending Luminate to the Anglia Railways division and of the Liverpool Street IECC area. And now they've got another contract, and this one really goes to town. It extends Luminate to all of Anglia, all of Great Western, all of Wales, and it also takes over control of the Elizabeth line, which of course links to Network Rail regions. So there's more to come, but I give some details of what Luminate provides at the moment. And finally, in my Let Us Now Praise Famous Men tributes to past railmen, it's Adrian Shooter. Most reports and obituaries of him have concentrated on his success following privatisation with creating Chiltern Railways, buying trains, the Evergreen series of infrastructure upgrades. But I look back at Adrian's experience with British Rail, which really made him the manager he was. I think you'll find it interesting, and I've even dug out a photograph from an article I wrote about him back in 1985 of the young Adrian at his desk. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy the column. Apologise for the heavy weight of politics, but that's what the railway is all about at the moment. But I'm trying to produce a more varied column next month.
Thank you, Roger. Now, for the rest of the magazine, here comes the editor, Philip Sherratt, who's going to go through all the other stuff that's in there. And of course, as always, there's plenty to read in it. So he's going to tell you all about it. Here he is.
Thanks, Ian, and hello everyone again. Good to be with you. So for our February issue, we had two lead features about developments in the north of England. Now, a lot's been written and said about the Trans-Pennine route upgrade. This is the multi-billion-pound programme to improve the Manchester-Leeds-York route. Much needed, many would say, a route that's short of capacity and is not particularly fast. We've had criticism from Roger in our own magazine about the costs of the scheme, but what is actually planned? What is the aim? Well, that's what we tried to set out in this feature. My colleague James Abbott has spoken to Network Rail and to Trans-Pennine Express, which is obviously the main operator on the route. And so hopefully we've given you a good overview in this article about what the plans are, how it's going to be delivered, and what the benefits are going to be. Alongside that, in the North of England section, I've spoken to Northern Managing Director Nick Donovan, who's given us an overview of the business, and he's optimistic about where Northern is. It's punching above its weight in terms of passenger numbers and revenue, but there is more to do, and he's also very anxious that the business is transformed for the future, and we look ahead rather than backwards. So I hope you find that interesting, addressing current challenges, but also looking ahead to the rest of the decade, really. Another route that we focus on this time is the Marches line. This is along the English-Welsh border. It's a route in the throes of change in terms of rolling stock. We've just had Transport for Wales introduce Mark IVs hauled by Class 67s on Manchester to Cardiff services along that route. That's the most profitable route on the Transport for Wales operation. And there's new CAF Class 197s on the way as well soon, which are just entering service in North Wales and will be on that route later this year. And there'll be timetable changes coming as well. So it's a good time to take a look at prospects for it, but the signalling is not new. It's all mechanical, traditional signalling with signal boxes, and that does present challenges, particularly obviously during industrial action, and they've had some issues with staff sickness along there. So all of those issues brought together in a very interesting profile of an important route serving some important locations from Cardiff and Newport up to Shrewsbury. We've written a lot in the magazine about Project Speed and about the Oakhampton line project, the reopening or the restoration of passenger services on the Dartmoor line in Devon, and that was led on the Network Rail side by Christian Irwin, who's now heading up the Rail Investment Centre of Excellence, which is really looking to embed those speed principles. So what's the Centre of Excellence and what's it doing? Well, Andy Roden, my colleague, has spoken to Christian, and you can read all about it. And we also have a bit of an overview of the first-of-a-kind proposals. These are the winning bids in the innovation programme run by the Department for Transport and Innovate UK. And there's a few quite interesting projects in there. From a news point of view, you'll see that we do lead with industrial action, unfortunately, but you'll see that reduction of the driver cost reduction and the removal of fleets is a key issue. Ian will talk about the Class 769s in particular in one of his items, but Great Western's Class 769s are going off lease, and there's also it also looks like EMR may withdraw its Class 180s from the Midland Main Line. So a quite interesting situation after the story, of course, of Great Western Railway planning to withdraw its Castle HSTs in due course as well. There's some interesting developments in Wales around rolling stock, and we also have an interesting report around the ScotRail Highland Explorer Class 153s. The good news is they're going to be extending their deployment this summer. They're going to go up to Fort William and Mallaig on the West Highland Line, in addition to the Oban services they currently operate. So that's a quite interesting background story to how ScotRail arrived at that plan to deploy it, and you could read all about that in our news pages, amongst many other things. So, plenty going on and plenty to read, and I hope you'll enjoy it as ever. And thanks very much for listening. I shall hand back over to Ian.
Thank you, Philip. See, I said there'd be a lot there. Now then, on to my Pan Up column. Pan Up this month, as I say, talks about these new trains, so we'll get a review of that. The bigger part of it is looking at big modifications, things like the Class 769 and the Viva Rail work and so on. Really big change of use stuff. Why do people do it? Why do people risk such large amount of money on what is never going to be quite as good as a new train? Well, by the time you've read the article, you'll be quite wised up on that, because we'll describe the motivation, the mindset of Roscoe's when they decide to invest millions on something which is really pretty risky, knowing how risk-averse they normally are. But when the 769s were being done, things were a bit of a special case. So we'll find out why they did it, and no doubt now why they regret it. Still, there we are. So that's it for this month. We'll see you next time for the March one. How soon it comes round. Bye.
Visit www.modernrailways.com for more interesting and essential information about the British Railway Network.